Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Linkurious Enterprise Deep Dive webinar. Today we are going to present Linkurious Enterprise plugins and how you can leverage them in your investigation process. I am Shraddha, Customer Success Manager at Linkurious, and my role is to help customers achieve their goals with Linkurious Enterprise. I have with me today Andrea Berni.
Hello, my name is Andrea and I'm a solution engineer at Linkurious. My role is to help our customers dealing with technical challenges and ensuring they gain the most value out of Linkurious Enterprise.
Before I move to the agenda, I'm sure you may have noticed that today's presentation include some visual elements of the Linkurious brand that you have never seen before. You are actually the happy few to see them as a sneak peek before everybody else. In the coming weeks, we will be officially revealing our new modernized branding to the world, and you will see the major changes we have made to our brand identity that will also be reflected in an upgraded Linkurious user interface and a brand new website. We hope you will appreciate. Stay tuned. The agenda of today's presentation is to talk about what is a plugin and how you can benefit by using Linkurious Enterprise plugins. To begin, we will share a few use cases to give you context in which plugins could be useful. Then we will give you an understanding on plugins, moving on to show you official plugins like CSV import plugin and data table plugin. Towards the end, we will explain how you can configure and install them to use it. A little housekeeping before we move on. We welcome your questions and comments which you can put in the Q&A section at any time during the presentation. We will be happy to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. Let me begin with some context before I dive into use cases to explain why we chose to develop plugins. Many of our customers, while performing analysis with Linkurious Enterprise, came up with custom requirements which were not available as a feature in Linkurious Enterprise today. These were the features which were specific to customers and could not be generalized. So we decided to develop plugins to fulfill those needs. There are official plugins which we are going to demonstrate today, but you can also develop plugins on your own. We will be organizing a second webinar on how to develop plugins in the coming month. So let's move on to our first use case. Our customers want to leverage the power of graph and look for insights and connections in data using Linkurious Enterprise. The first step for them is to have the data in form of a graph. Let's consider they have their data which they want to analyze in CSV files. As they are the end users who are analyst investigators, they do not have any graph query skills. So how can they process their data in graph and have it in forms of nodes and edges? How can Linkurious Enterprise help in this case? Linkurious Enterprise offers you the capability to easily import your data into a graph using a plugin. We have an official plugin named as CSV import plugin which helps you import CSV files in graph. Let's move to the second use case. Now I have the data in a graph. I'm an analyst working on analyzing data to perform investigations to detect fraud and suspicious cases. Towards the end of my analysis, I require data in a tabular format to compute some calculations to gather more insights to support my investigation. Also, I need to report them in a customized format according to my organization standards. How can I achieve that? Can Linkurious Enterprise provide me a solution to add custom features like this? The answer is yes. Linkurious Enterprise gives you the possibility to extend its capabilities with a plugin and add custom features based on your requirements. We are also going to show you an official plugin named as data table plugin for this case. Let's move on to the last use case. So far we have imported the data made some investigations using Linkurious Enterprise. Finally, as a fraud analyst, I have found a suspicious case and I want to file a suspicious activity report to the Financial Intelligence Unit. Now, I require to export these results from my investigation, connect them to an external application, and finally create a final report which I want to send it to FIU. How can Linkurious Enterprise help me transform these results in this case? Here also, the answer will be Linkurious Enterprise plugins, which addresses your needs and help you improve your investigation workflow. So, we talked about few use cases to let you know what plugins has to offer from business perspective. Now, it's time for Bernie to take this forward to show you how it works.
Now it's time to move to the plugins, and let's start by defining what is a plugin. A plugin is a web application that can be plugged into Linkurious Enterprise, and moreover, this application will be hosted by the Linkurious Enterprise server. This means that for having this plugin, you don't need to set up an extra server, but you can reuse the same instance as an Linkurious Enterprise. Moreover, it's also the easiest and fastest way to have custom features or tools. In fact, since the web application is hosted by Linkurious Enterprise, you can reuse the whole server. So you can reuse the same authentication system, you can reuse the custom groups, you can use the access control, you can reuse the alerts, you can reuse the query template, and so on. So it's like you are building something that is very integrated into Linkurious Enterprise. That's the reason why we say that is the easiest and fastest way to do this. And just to give you an example, when you develop a plugin, the users using this plugin don't need to be authenticated in the plugin. This is because they will reuse the same session as Linkurious Enterprise, and so they will use the plugin as Linkurious Enterprise users. Finally, with plugins, you are really able to streamline your workflow to supercharge your investigations. Let's talk about what is possible to do with a plugin. First of all, it's possible to interact with the Linkurious REST API server. You can use the whole set of API provided by Linkurious Enterprise, and you can even reuse the front-end API in case you want to display a visualization or a Linkurious Enterprise user interface in the plugin, but you can also reuse the backend API. So all the APIs for handling the authentication, for managing the server, and so on. Another thing that is possible to do in a plugin is to interact with the external API systems. So it's very easy to call external API coming from an external database, or more generically to an external application. So this is possible within a plugin. Then it's also possible to add one or more custom web pages. That web pages will be, of course, displayed in the user's browser, and this means that a user can easily switch from Linkurious Enterprise to a custom web page by never leaving the Linkurious Enterprise server. They will have a new interface with a set of new features. Then it's also possible to create custom APIs. For example, it's possible to create an API to be used by an external system. So let's say that you need to transform a visualization and you want to do this transformation directly in Linkurious Enterprise, but the exported and transformed visualization need to be consumed by an external application. So the easiest way to do this is to create a custom API that download the visualization, perform all the transformation directly in the Linkurious Enterprise server, and make it available through a custom API. Finally, what we can say is that generally speaking, it's possible to implement custom code in a plugin. So there are no limitations in terms of coding. Of course, we also need to mention what is not possible to do with Linkurious Enterprise, and there are just two limitations. The first one is that it's not possible to change the Linkurious Enterprise user experience, but of course you can extend it. When I say changing the customer experience, I mean that, for example, it's not possible to change the behavior of a Linkurious Enterprise button. This is something that a plugin cannot do. Another thing that is not possible to do is to interact with an open visualization. And by open visualization, I mean a visualization that is currently displayed in a user browser. So you can, of course, interact with saved visualization. You can even change the visualization, but it's not possible to make this change directly available in an open visualization. Now I want to introduce you the first official plugin developed by Linkurious Enterprise. This plugin is called CSV Import Plugin, and is essentially a plugin for importing CSV files. This is a very common format for storing data in a tabular array. Many relational databases support this type of file, so it's very easy to export a SQL table in a CSV file. And in Linkurious Enterprise, we offer the possibility to import this file directly via Linkurious Enterprise user interface. This means that an end user that want to import new information into a graph database, or maybe want to start a project in a graph database starting from an empty database, can do this by interacting only with Linkurious Enterprise. So the user will not need to interact with a command line tool for the graph databases or with a graph databases user interface. Moreover, it's also possible to do so with no graph query skills. So everyone can really use this plugin and import this data into a graph databases without the necessity to write a single line of query. Finally, this plugin is available for free, since this is part of the Linkurious Enterprise license. So you can already download this plugin in our GitHub page. Now let's see this plugin in action, and let's move to Linkurious Enterprise. So I am now in my local Linkurious Enterprise instance, and as said before by Shraddha, I'm working in a company that is starting a new graph project. So what I have here is that my database is completely empty and I need to import data, but I don't have any graph skills, so I cannot write a query for importing this information. What I can do is to use our plugin, so I can run a custom action called import data. And as you can see, I'm now redirected to a new page, but this page is still hosted inside my local Linkurious Enterprise instance. As said before, all the plugins are executed directly inside the Linkurious Enterprise server, so I'm not leaving my server. So a teammate shared with me some files that contain the data that needs to be imported in my new graph database. What I can do is to browse the file, select the file. So they share with me a file called person CSV file that contains information for persons, and here I can upload the file. Now I need to specify if the file contains nodes or edges. In my case, we decide to modelize person as nodes, so we will have person nodes. I select nodes, I click on next. Linkurious Enterprise asks me confirmation for the category of these nodes, that will be person, so this look good. Now the plugin will automatically detect all the columns in the CSV file, and this column will be automatically mapped into nodes properties. I can click on import, and as you can see, Linkurious Enterprise automatically import 100 nodes into my graph databases, and the import was successful, and I have write no graph query code. Now I need to import another file because my teammate also shared a ping CSV file. This ping file contains relationships between person nodes. So I select here edges, and when I click next, once again, the plugin discovers all the properties, all the columns contained in the CSV file, asking me confirmation of the hash types. So this once again looks good. It says that there is just one column in the CSV file that is called date. This dates column will be mapped as an edge property. I can click next. I need now to specify the source and destination node for this edge type. So in my case, this is a ping relationship that starts from a person node and end in a person node. So I select person as source node. For the destination node, we have once again person. Now I can click on import, and once again Linkurious Enterprise import all the information in my graph database. So once again the import is successful, and when I go back to Linkurious Enterprise, I try to execute the same query as before, but this time I have all the nodes displayed here. I have all the relationships. As you can see, there are even some properties, since if we have the caption of the node, but if I click on the node, I can also see all the different properties that were stored before in the CSV file. We just saw how it's possible to import CSV file into Linkurious Enterprise, but now I want to present another plugin that is called Data Table plugin. With this plugin, it's possible to extract and display graph elements such as nodes, edges, and their properties in a tabular way. So it means that you can start from a graph, extract all the information that you need from a graph, and to make them display into a table. It's moreover possible to customize this table. In fact, it's possible to exactly select the property that you want to display. It's possible to filter these properties, and it's even possible to change the order of the property in the table. Finally, it's possible to export the table into a CSV file. Once again, this is an official plugin developed by Linkurious Enterprise and is available for free as part of your Linkurious Enterprise license. So you can already download this plugin in our GitHub page. Let's move once again into Linkurious Enterprise and see the plugin in action. This time, in this demo, I'm acting as a mortgage loan fraud analyst, and with my team we identify a strange pattern between Team Ribot and Erkonoki. As you can see, there are different mortgage loan nodes that are somehow connected to the same realtor and brokers, and this is something suspicious. So what I want to do right now is to compare the different mortgage loans and see if there is a pattern between these nodes. This is something that can be easily done in a table. In fact, I'm going to use our plugin for displaying all these mortgage loans in a table. So the first thing that I want to do is to open the filter panel and select all the mortgage loans. Then by running a custom action, I can open this node in a table. Once again, I'm redirected to an extra user interface, so an extra web application that is still hosted in the Linkurious Enterprise server. So once again, I'm not leaving the Linkurious server. Here, as you can see, I have all the mortgage loans that this time are displayed as a table. So for every row, I have a different mortgage loan. I'm listing all the properties of the mortgage loan, and I'm even adding extra columns with evaluated values. What I can do here is to move the properties. I can decide a custom order for the columns. If you want, you can also remove some irrelevant columns, like for example the ID or the contract ID column. And finally, you can export the whole table as a CSV file. This plugin is configurable, so you can configure the plugin with your schema, and this means that you can basically display whatever you want within this table. Now I want to talk about Linkurious Enterprise and Ogma Integration, but before moving forward, I want to briefly introduce Ogma. Ogma is our proprietary library for displaying graphs, and this is the same library used in Linkurious Enterprise for displaying visualization. Many customers decide to purchase both the Linkurious Enterprise and Ogma license, and this is because they want to use the power of the Linkurious Enterprise server with all the integrated features such as the authentication system, the access control, the query templates, and generally speaking, the power of the Linkurious Enterprise user interface. But they also want to be free in terms of graph customization, and graph customization can be offered by the Ogma library. That being said, at times it might be convenient to switch from Linkurious Enterprise to Ogma, and plugins can also be used for this reason. What is possible to do is to easily recreate an Linkurious Enterprise visualization into an Ogma container, and we offer the possibility to do so with minimum effort. In fact, we offer for free to all customers having a Linkurious Enterprise and Ogma license library that is called Ogma Linkurious Parser that really help you in doing a conversion between Linkurious Enterprise and Ogma without the necessity to write lots of code lines. Let's see this library in action, and let's move once again to Linkurious Enterprise. As said before by Shraddha, in my company, I want to perform the investigation in Linkurious Enterprise, but then I want to extract the visualization, perform some customization, and then to display it into an external application, maybe just to have it as a report, or maybe to integrate it into another web application that is not Linkurious Enterprise. So what I'm doing here, I complete my investigation in Linkurious Enterprise, identify a strange pattern in some bank account transaction, but now I need to move to Ogma to customize my final report. What I can do is to open once again a custom action that this time is called Ogma plugin, and now I'm redirected to an external page that once again is still hosted in the Linkurious Enterprise server. And as you can see here, I have a visualization that looks exactly as the Linkurious Enterprise one. You might think that this is the Linkurious Enterprise, but in the reality, this is pure Ogma. In fact, if I click on a node, nothing appears on the left side. I don't have the left panel. There are no search bar, no custom action, no filter panel, nothing. This is a pure Ogma container, but everything looks exactly like the Linkurious Enterprise. For a heavy node, we are keeping the position of the nodes, we are keeping the color, the icon, the size, we are keeping the captions. Everything is the same also for the edges, and this is a starting point for performing extra customization. What you can do here with the library is basically to use the whole set of functions available in the Ogma library. For example, I can toggle the halo if you want all the nodes to be more visible. I can toggle the shape if you want to change the shape of the node. But generally speaking, the idea is that you can use the whole set of functions that are available in the library. So there are really no limits on what you can do with this plugin. Now, what I want to do in my company is to collapse some nodes. So I want to display cycles in the node as a single node, and maybe to move all the person nodes that are connected to this cycle. So what I want to do is to call an Ogma function for collapsing cycles in nodes. When I call it, as you can see, multiple nodes are collapsed in a single node. We have 4 nodes here, and now I want to move the nodes. And as you can see, when I move the nodes are can be placed in line with other nodes, since we have some guidelines, and it's very easily so to shape the final graph in a perfect shape. So we reached the final topic of this deep dive webinar, and we now move behind the scenes and let's see how it's possible to add plugins to Linkurious Enterprise and make them available to all the users. First of all, let's see how it's possible to install a plugin. A plugin is shipped in a .alk archive. All the plugins that are available in our GitHub page can be downloaded in this format. And once you have this archive, what you need to do is to place the archive inside the data/plugin folder of your server. Once the plugin is in this server, what you need to do is just to save the configuration file. We will see later how to configure the plugin. And after the configuration is saved, the plugin will be up and running. If you want to check the status of the plugin, what you can do is to call a dedicated API, and this API is /API/admin/plugins. You will receive a JSON file with all the plugin installed in your instance with the status. So let's talk about the plugin configuration. First of all, plugin configuration is stored as a JSON object, and this JSON object is automatically generated the first time that a plugin is started. So if you had a new plugin in Linkurious Enterprise, when the server is booting, it will automatically create this object in the configuration file. Some plugin might require some extra properties, and this is something that really depends on the plugin. You need to read the documentation in order to know which are the mandatory properties. But the idea of the extra properties is that a plugin can be reused for multiple use cases, and we will see an example later. Finally, it's also possible to run multiple instances of the same plugin. So this means that if you have 2 use cases where the same plugin is necessary, you don't need to install the plugin twice, but you just need to declare 2 different plugins in the configuration file. And Linkurious Enterprise will reuse the same plugin, but with 2 different use cases. So here we have on the right side of the slide an example of the configuration file. So as said before, this is a JSON file, and it's available in the admin menu in the global configuration and by scrolling to the plugin section. So in this section you have the JSON file with all the installed plugin. And as you can see here, we have 2 different plugins. The first one is called Data Table, and the second one is called Custom Image. So what we have are 2 different objects. The first one is Data Table, and Data Table must match the plugin name. Bear in mind that the plugin name is not the name of the .alk archive, but it's something that is called inside the plugin. So once again, refer to the documentation if you need to know the name of the plugin. and the second plugin is called custom image export, and even in this case we have an object. More specifically, what we have for the first plugin is not a simple object, but is an array of objects. In fact, with this configuration file, we are declaring two different data table plugins. The first data table plugin has a base path that is called AML transaction, and the second one a base path that is called AML real estate. When you need to declare multiple plugins, multiple instances of the same plugin, this parameter is mandatory because it will represent the base path of the plugin when calling the plugin in the user interface. You can also notice that the two plugins here are quite different in terms of configuration. The second plugin is very simple, does not contain any extra parameters, but the first one also contains some extra properties like entity type, item types, and properties. All of them are configuration properties that once again depends on the plugin. So here, by reading the documentation, you have the list of all the mandatory properties that need to be configured. More specifically, here we are configuring a data table plugin. So what we need to specify is the type of entity that we want to display, a node or an edge, and the item type and the list of the properties that should be displayed into the table. Finally, I want to talk about how it's possible to execute a plugin. We saw before that every plugin has a base path. This base path must be manually declared in case you want to have multiple instances of the same plugin, but in case the plugin has a single instance, the base path will match the plugin name. So generally speaking, all the plugins are available at the URL of the server /plugin/base path. You can execute the plugin by directly accessing the plugin URL, or like I did in my demo, you can run a custom action for reaching the plugin. When running a custom action, you can of course passing some parameters, like in the example that we have here. Here I'm calling a plugin where the base path is my plugin, and what I'm passing to the plugin is a set of nodes. This set of nodes will contain an array of IDs, and the plugin will have access to these parameters. So it's basically possible to make a dynamic plugin that change the behavior based on how it's called from a Linkurious Enterprise visualization. Finally, we need to mention that we also have custom API when talking about plugin, and this custom API are available at the Linkurious Enterprise server URL /plugin/basepath/API/the name of the custom API. Of course, the name of the custom API is something that needs to be defined by developers. So it's now time to move to the wrap-up section, and I leave Shraddha to go on.
Thanks, Bernie. It's time for a wrap-up before we move on to the Q&A session. To conclude, I would like to emphasize on why to use Linkurious Enterprise plugins. First, it helps you to streamline and improve your investigation workflow. They help you fulfill your custom needs and enrich the flow to support analysts in end-to-end analysis to work more efficiently and accurately. Secondly, it also assists you in getting the best return on investments, as you have the option to add extra capabilities which can accelerate the adoption of Graph and Linkurious Enterprise within your organization. Lastly, it also speeds up the projects with Linkurious Enterprise, as you can easily deliver advanced graph visualization capabilities. So today we demonstrated plugins and how you can configure them. A reminder that there will be a follow-up webinar to show you how to develop Linkurious Enterprise plugins. It's now time for the Q&A session.